Hello, my name is Josue Peralta, and welcome to the first bonus episode of Season 2. In this episode, we talk to Pastor Zack Payne, the youth director for the Wisconsin Conference, and his wife Allison about their love story. We start at the beginning of what their dating journeys were like, how they met, and how they pursued intentional dating, all the way up to the point where they got married. We had a lot of fun chatting with them, and I hope you guys get as much out of it as we did. Before we begin, a couple of big announcements. The first announcement is that we are dropping our first merch collection in the coming days. There's a collection of t-shirts, stickers, hats, and sweatshirts for all the sweater lovers out there like me. It's been months in the making. We've been putting a lot of effort, a lot of sweat into it, and we're excited to finally be able to share it with all of you. Our second announcement is that we are finally opening up our Patreon. Doing so opens the door for us to offer a lot more perks to you, our listeners, as well as to hear more from you in the form of polls, Q&As, and a lot more things. We have quite a few perks planned that I think you guys will enjoy, like early access to episodes during the season, as well as earlier access to future merch collections. There will also be a dedicated section for deleted scenes and conversations that had to be cut for time, unfortunately, like from this past season. There will also be transcripts of episodes going back to season 1, so you can actually see how we produce each episode in detail. We're also bringing you behind the scenes in our newsletter with updates on what we're up to in the off season, what our future plans are. You get to know them before anyone else. We'll be discussing and putting things out like what we'll be discussing next season, what the theme is of the next season, what the episode list will look like, and interestingly, what different series we're working on in the background that people don't even know about yet. Perhaps most exciting, there will be extra exclusive content to our subscribers that you won't be able to find anywhere else. And speaking of exclusive content, that brings us to our third announcement that we have produced an exclusive series for our Patreon subscribers dropping in the next couple weeks called Why Are You Single? In it, we talk to Adventist young adults about their single journeys. We learn about who they are, lessons they've learned, stories of heartbreak, and how they're currently going about dating. Our objective there is to share what we're all going through, laugh at some of the happy misfortunes, learn from each other. After all, we don't have enough time to make all the mistakes ourselves, so why not learn from that of others? The series will start with the three of us going through our own single journeys, starting with me, followed by Abby and Michael, and then some of our other friends and other Adventist young adults that we've been in contact with. Honestly, it's pretty exciting stuff with some of the quote-unquote private-ish stories that we can't really put in the normal podcast. I can't wait for you all to tune in and listen to it. All three of those things, the merch collection, the Patreon, and the new series, will drop on Monday, May 13th. Keep an eye on our website for full details coming in the next few days, and stay tuned here. We will put more details as they come out. Thanks again for tuning in. We couldn't have done any of this without your support. Talk to you all soon. Enjoy the episode. Cheers.
Purposeful dating. We have two very special guests with us today. We have Pastor Zack Payne and his wife Allison Payne. Pastor Zack and Allison are the leaders for the youth and young adult ministries in Wisconsin Conference, as well as the camp directors. They do a great job. I personally have known Pastor Zack, and I've met Allison on occasion. We haven't really talked, but I hope we do more so in the future.
I'm usually
Uh, I know you're usually, you're doing your own thing. But I've heard a lot about you in passing with people. So, but they do a great job. I'm excited for what they're bringing to the conference. Yeah, I'm excited to hear their story and their perspective on dating and Christian dating in the Adventist church. So, yeah.
All right. So, first of all, could you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Like individually or?
Yeah, individually.
Okay, so I guess my bullet points.
I was born in Orlando, Florida, and kind of moved to the Midwest when I was around 9. And lived in Indiana for a while, and then just kind of bounced around for school. Graduated from Southern Adventist University with a theology degree, and
Nice.
I worked briefly in Tennessee, and then ever since 2012, I've been in the Wisconsin Conference as a pastor first, and now as the youth director. And there's so much more I could say. I guess I went to seminary at at Andrews, but that's not the really interesting
it's
stuff.
your resume.
Yeah, seriously, I don't know.
What are some things you like to do outside of the ministry? Like, what are some things?
Yeah, like who is Zach as a person?
Yeah,
Because I've
behind.
actually had this conversation with people where, specifically nowadays, like when you talk to somebody, it's like your first name becomes Pastor Zach
Yeah.
instead of just Zach. So who is Zach apart from the cloak of ministry, of minister, I should say?
Yeah, well, I wanted. I grew up really like into like art and writing and stuff. Like that was kind of my aptitude. So, creative writing. Kind of wanted to write a novel. Never really did, but a lot of that kind of stuff. Journalistic writing. Kind of thought maybe I would be a journalist or a writer to some degree.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed writing and playing music. I got into, the basics of sound engineering and thought maybe I'd open a recording studio. Didn't really go that direction. And then like fine arts, drawing, painting, that kind of stuff. So, I mean, those were kind of the things that I was into. And then that all got derailed when I went to work at summer camp my first summer, and got called to be a pastor soon after. Called as in like not a job offer because I was 17, but like I felt God calling me to do that. That was kind of like the one thing that I told God I didn't want to do. And then it was kind of like, I don't know, weirdly clear in my mind that like that's what I was being called to do. So all those things, I kind of saw myself going in those kind of directions. But the cool thing is, in ministry, God uses all those things for ministry. So I've used all those gifts, and it's been kind of an exciting journey. Being creative in ministry, and I think that connects with young people.
Yeah, and I specifically remember during COVID, you did that viral what was it? It was like a meme version of a sermon, or not meme version, but like emoji version of a sermon. I don't know if you remember that was where it
I
was
don't
Myrna.
know.
Yeah, it went
Haven't
like
seen it.
viral. I think it went on like Lake Union Herald. I just remember it went like around like everywhere, and it was really good. And
That's cool.
I was like, wow, I didn't know you had that type of like skill to like put a sermon in emoji version. So I thought that was really cool. So yeah.
Well,
Going
yeah,
through creativeness.
it was kind of interesting, and it went around weirdly, like you said. I think Adventist Today and like
Yep.
Adventist
I remember
World shared it, and it was like
Mhm.
weird how viral it went. But the secret to my success with a lot of that stuff is my
Oh,
yeah
of
no,
course.
and I need to shout her out because now we need to transition to learning about who Allie is. She has a more exciting story than I do. But yeah, but as far as like she's the other side of the coin of the creative stuff, because she does a lot of media and illustration, video editing kind of stuff. So
Awesome.
yeah, so it works well together. We like some of the same stuff, but I think she likes the boring stuff, and I like the fun stuff. So
It's a good mix. Yeah.
So, Allie, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born and raised in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I went through the Adventist system all the way through high school, and first semester I went to Southern for my first semester and did not like it. And so ended up going
enough.
tech school, no bills, That was nice, like got an associate's in kind of multimedia editing, and then just kind of hung around. Oh no, that's not true. And then my sister wanted to be a missionary. She went to Southern for the whole time, and she wanted to do a year of student missions, and so I went with her. So I was in the
Oh, nice.
Philippines for a couple years.
Wow.
And came back, and after that I, because my goal, of course, everyone's goal, well, maybe not everyone's, but when you go into media, your original goal is like, oh, Hollywood. That's what I'm going to do. But after being a missionary, I was like, no, I want to use media for Jesus. And so when I came back, I ended up working at the grade school that I went to. But just, I was the secretary, but I also like made videos for them and did picture, things for them and kind of helped them out in different ways with my skill set. But yeah, and that's where Zach and I met.
Oh, that's awesome.
Nice.
That's great. 2 years in the Philippines. Wow.
Wow. So you said that's where you guys met. Could you guys tell us a little bit about how you did meet? Like how old you were, things like that?
Having been called to be a pastor at 17, I literally haven't dated without some sort of like that framework going on in my head. So that's been, unique. And, if you're talking about being purposeful, like every dating situation I've been in has been with the idea of like, I'm moving towards something ministry related. And so maybe that's been a good thing. I don't know, but it's just always kind of made me double check like on things. And I don't know that I always was like super purposeful with my dating, but it was never like, it was always with the idea of like, this could become someone who's like a long-term, like a spouse eventually, or,
How would they be as a pastor's wife kind of thing?
right. Sure. And, so I didn't start dating until I was 19. Met a girl at camp. It was not a really great fit. And she was,
How come?
anyway, it just, that lasted for like a year. And then I was kind of mopey for a year and, didn't really have anything going on. And then by that point, I was like really getting serious about my calling. And so I started dating a girl, started going to Southern, and we actually got engaged.
Wow.
But then kind of realized, there were some red flags, and we just kind of, decided to call it before we, got to the wedding date. And that was hard. And then rebounded, like you do after a serious relationship, and had kind of a less serious thing, but, still like you always want to try and make something work. But I think that was hard because I was graduating and like becoming for the first time, like really like a pastor working for a church, not just like a student who's kind of like working with the church to fulfill requirements for a degree, And I just remember it was kind of funny, but kind of pathetic, just because I like had just started my first pastoring job, broke up with this girl, and my head pastor was like, "Hey, I've been doing a series on relationships, and like you should preach about like, like if you want to fit into that series, preach about relationships." I'm just like, I'll preach about anything else for you. But like right now, that is not
It's not something I'm equipped to do right now.
right. So then, and this was all in this church I was working for briefly in Tennessee was like right down the road from Southern, so then I got called a little bit after to go to Wisconsin, and kind of just understand that like you're leaving the promised land, and like have not found someone and moving to Wisconsin, where now I know even better than I did then, that there's like
Nobody here?
It's not plentiful,
Oh, yeah. We talked about that last season, trust me.
Looks like things have not changed.
Yeah, you guys get it, but
Yeah.
but I think it's just interesting to the story because I kind of came here with the idea that I wasn't really gonna find someone. Like I was coming here for ministry. I was coming here to like take the step into full-time pastoring, and I was a youth pastor at Green Bay, and I wasn't under the impression I was going to find anyone. So that's kind of, I think, an important aspect because that's my mindset when I went to Green Bay. And then I don't know if you want to tell some of your background, but that kind of leads up to us meeting, is me being in that mindset. So
Awesome.
Really, I mean, all my dating was in high school, which, is dating, but kind of a couple months before Zach was hired, because my sister was down at Southern, and my mom, was afraid I was going to be an old spinster, I guess. And so she was like,
Yep.
do I'll pay for you to move down to Chattanooga so you can find somebody. And I was like, I just feel like that's real lame to move somewhere. And like, I was like, I feel like God is big enough that if he wants me to find someone, he'll bring them to me. I'm like, well, good luck with that, because this is Green Bay and there's not many people coming through.
Exactly.
But I had like a couple different, I was working at the school, but I was also nannying for a family and stuff. And it was just kind of like, I don't want to like leave what I have, to go find somebody, because like that just seems risky. I don't know. So that's where I came in.
And I find it interesting, and before we go further, that like a lot of our experiences, I feel like are shared, because I literally had somebody tell me the same thing, like a friend of mine a couple weeks ago, maybe you should move. I'm like, well, but I have my church here. So I feel like a part of your story is like also mine as well. But I'm glad, you were able to stick to, or both of you, were able to stick to like, where you believe God was, bringing you, and he brought you guys together. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So then, paint the picture for me, Pastor Zach. You come into the church, you see Allison, fireworks, marriage. Is that exactly how that went?
I do remember there is a moment. She thinks there was nothing.
My version of the story is better, but
She thinks there was nothing. And like, again, I just want to reiterate, like, I came into this like career, ministry, not girls. Like that was just like my mindset. But I do remember that my parents like had pointed you out, and
because
and we like after my first Sabbath, like we all went over to
there was
someone's
a potluck
house.
at someone's house, and I was also there, but we never talked at that potluck.
We didn't talk.
Yeah.
No.
But I did talk to my parents, like, just kind of.
And they
got
had
to know
mentioned to me something like, "Oh, did you meet that girl?" And I remember kind of like looking over and like thinking she looked cute, and it was like this fleeting. Like I literally like actually remembered this later, but like it was kind of a fleeting thing. Like I didn't linger on it, and then moving forward, there wasn't really anything as far as like on my part a noticing of her, and that's kind of what got us off on the greatest foot. Was that I was very aloof to her existence.
So at the end of that potluck, like they were leaving, and I thought, well, I'll say goodbye to his parents, because I, met them or whatever. So I went and I said, it was nice to meet you guys. And he was standing by his car with his arms crossed. And I said, so I guess I'll see you around. And he goes, sure.
How dare he?
Wow.
And then walked away and was like, well, I'm done with that guy.
I like the confidence, but maybe a touch.
How is that confident? That's not comes off as terrible. Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Well,
You'll see me, but I won't see you. No, just kidding.
Well, you have to understand that when my wife tells stories, she does the voices of the people,
Because
and
I was
so
there.
I'm not certain that that's how I said it, but probably
I believe Allison.
that's what I said. But
It's okay, Pastor.
There's not many ways you can spin it. Sure. That doesn't
Sure.
any better.
And he has many reasons for why he might have said sure, but he doesn't remember saying sure.
no.
We never, what's the old saying? We never hear ourselves quite the way we are.
There's that too.
So then, after that kind of short debacle per se, who then pursued whom, or how did the tides turn?
Well, so the true version of the story goes like this: she was head over heels for me,
Okay.
and I was just moving forward, tunnel vision, didn't really see her, and that made her just really dislike me.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
Not the head over heels part, but
Yeah, she was.
I like how you guys are telling the story.
Behind closed doors, she'll admit
okay,
later
that is true.
that she was head over heels.
Not head over heels, but just like I was like, we should get to know each other, but you just like wanted nothing to do, and I was like, okay, well, fine, then I'm,
So there was a lot of interactions, though. I mean, as far as like, I was the youth pastor, and so I was interacting with the school a lot, and so she's the secretary there. She's often chaperoning on trips, and so am I. And so, like, she's...
I was helping with adventures. You were
Right.
helping club ministries.
And then so, like, just a lot of interacting. You would write plays, and I kind of try to help out with that. And sometimes, I don't know, all the drama with the drama, and so we rubbed shoulders a lot, we interacted a lot, we worked together on a lot of things, but I think like consistently I kind of got like an attitude from her, and so like I just never really, like, it never popped into my head like, oh, I wonder if she would want to hang out, because like so it's like she got this impression from me that I didn't want to hang out, so then she gave an attitude back, and I was kind of like, well, yeah, she definitely doesn't like me, that's not an option,
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Wow.
Yeah.
and I want to say somewhere in there, like, I mean, there was a humanity, though. Like, it wasn't like we hated each other, and I think
we worked together a lot.
And I think certainly, like, there was a point, and I'm trying to remember if it was before we started like realizing we liked each other, but I think that it was like, I needed someone to be hanging out at youth group with me, because like, you have like kids who are under 18, and it's a couple times it was just like me in the room, and it was like fine if it was a group of kids, but some parent drops their kid off like way before anyone else, and then it's just this awkward moment of like, and then there would be like there was like another mom that would hang out, and it got a bit awkward, like
she was single.
She brought her kids, and she was really opinionated on some things, and I just felt like it wasn't a great thing for her to be around for youth group, because anyway, it just was kind of odd, and I was just like, I need someone who's consistently like the other adult who's there. And I remember telling her like, hey, would you be at all interested in like helping out with this? And I think you were saying that you were tasked at some point, like before I got there, with being like the youth leader. And so like you kind of had a vested interest in something like youth group, so you'd love to be there, but just I had never asked.
Well, that's not true. I went to your first youth group, but after that you had made a comment of like, you don't have to come to these, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, and then was like, well, I won't go then.
That's so funny.
But so then he came back later and was like, so it's getting kind of awkward with this other mom, could you maybe come to like be a female in the room? And I was like, sure. So
yeah, well, and it was just kind of like, the vibe was like yeah, all you have to do is ask. Like, she wasn't opposed, or
Yeah.
like, in fact, she seemed like she was happy to be there. I think, and don't worry, she dishes it back. But I think my comment was more along the lines of like, I don't want you to feel obligated.
That's true. I don't want you to feel like you have to be
Like,
here.
I'm the new
Yes.
pastor, and I'm like not trying to come in and just be like, you are my minion, like you must be here.
Yeah. Okay, I get you.
But then I realized like no other adults were ever hanging out or showing up, and like so it kind of became a necessity.
So that's how I slid in there.
So
It became
yeah,
a
so
necessity.
There you go.
Opportunity.
that anyway, there was, as far as the working relationship, we were working together, and it was funny. So I went down to a conference in Chicago, the One Project, and I was staying with a friend in the area, and so I didn't have to pay for the hotel, and so it was great. Like, a friend from back home in Indiana, we went to Southern together. We just kind of connected. It was a great time reconnecting, and he was like asking me like, "What's the situation with the honeys in Green Bay?" And I was just like, "Man, it's it's not a lot going on." And he was like, "Well, who are like the prospects?" And I was just like, "Well, okay." And so I started telling him about like a small handful of girls who were here, and like we were looking at pictures, and we were just kind of like talking about like personalities and stuff. And he just kind of had this like, it was like when I was talking about you, and when he saw your picture, he was like, he was like, "I don't know, I think there might be something there." I was like, "Yeah, but she doesn't like me though. Like, I know she doesn't like me." And he was like, "Yeah, but these things are funny, like." He was like, I don't know. I almost think maybe you should see what would happen. And I was just like, okay, I mean, whatever. But it's kind of like after he said that, I couldn't like stop thinking about it. And so then I kind of, as I thought about it more, and we interacted, I kind of started, this was like, it was like early February or January or something, right? Late January.
Because the next time he saw me, it was Valentine's Day, and he was like, "I can't ask her out on Valentine's Day."
Too much pressure.
Day, yes.
Well, I think I even was going to,
Oh, because
but
we had choir practice that night, but I left.
yeah, it was like there was like a field trip,
It was a busy day.
school field trip, and then
Field
I was like, oh, maybe I'll ask her out at choir practice, and then she didn't come.
Oh man.
And then so it, but again, I think it ended up being okay, because it may be weird to like ask out on Valentine's Day,
Yeah.
So then, the next day, ended up asking out the next day, and tell how you remember that experience.
Why?
Well, because I'm forgetting how it starts. You gotta get me started.
I think it was a Friday, so we were having youth group that night. And he came in, he's like, "Oh, I'm going to be really busy right up until youth group. Can you pick up the pizza for youth group?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's no problem. I can do that." And he was kind of like, "Okay." And then he just kind of like was lingering awkwardly.
Oh, geez.
"Okay, is there anything else?" And he was like, no, just the pizza." And I was kind of like, "Okay, cool." And then he kind of started to walk out, and then he turned around and he was like, "And also, would you like to go out sometime?"
Wow.
And I was really caught off guard and was just like, "I mean, what do you mean?" And he was like a you and me kind of thing. And I was like,
I think I like specified like not as a group,
yeah.
like
Like a you and me thing. And then I was kind of like, "Oh, okay."
the awkwardness.
It was,
The worst she can say is no. It's like,
yeah.
This is
hesitate, yes.
were you pretty nervous at that point, Pastor Zach? Is that do you remember your heart in your chest? Like,
Oh yeah, super nervous. Well, because again, like, okay, so the stakes are high. Like, you
Yeah.
know, you're
At this
the
point, yeah.
yeah, you're the pastor.
Yeah.
You know, you're the youth pastor. So I mean, you know, you're not regarded as one of the real pastors, but
Mhm.
you know, but you're a spiritual authority, you know, and to a degree, and you know, and now you're you know, talking with one of your flock.
Wow.
And you know, like just all of the questions really of like
Mhm.
if she says no,
Yeah.
like does it get weird
Yeah.
beyond
That's
Is
just
she
true.
like
gonna pick up the pizza?
yeah. But like beyond that, like do people start like thinking that I'm weird for like asking, or like does she tell people about that, or like if she says yes and then like the dating relationship is weird, like does you know, if we break up, do people have to take sides? Do I have to move? Like can I not continue pastoring church, you know, like it gets too awkward, you know? So there's like a lot in that whole situation, you know.
Mhm.
But she said yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that's good.
And we didn't really set a time until later.
No, I think we set a time
Oh,
that day.
oh, did we?
Because yeah, then it was awkward. Because then you were like, "Oh, okay. Well, how about Sunday?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm busy." And then you were like, "Oh, okay. Well, we'll find
Oh
another day."
gosh.
So we didn't set a day,
Yeah.
and it was awkward. And then, because that weekend I went and visited a friend in Madison, and kind of told her like the whole story, and she like it was like Saturday night, and she was like, "And he wanted to go out with you tomorrow?" I'm like, yeah, but I told him I was like, "No, you need to leave. You need to go on that date." And so she made me leave the next morning so I could go on the date.
Sounds like a good friend.
Yes,
Yeah. So we did end up going on Sunday.
on Sunday.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was not a good first date.
It was not.
Oh
Oh
no.
no.
Yeah. So we, you know, first of all, and she reminds me of this. I at the time it seemed like a great idea, but yeah, you know, we went and went out to eat first and met at, you know, the best Vietnamese place in Green Bay.
The only
Which is called
No, now there's more, but yeah, I guess back then it was the only
one.
Vietnamese place. Pho number one, shout out.
Okay.
And and yeah, just it's just, you know, slurping noodles. So I mean, I guess, you know, potentially.
Leaning over bowls and covering mouths
And the conversation was nice. I mean, it was not. There's nothing weird about that. But then we went to Starbucks, and you know, just kind of like let's hang more. You know, it's down the street, so we're hanging out at Starbucks, and this homeless man frequented this location, and that's not really that interesting, except that he like clearly had some other issues, and so he kind of zeroed in on us and talked with us for a long time, like sat, you know, found an empty seat next to our table and just talking to us about how like
he can't use public toilets.
He can't use public toilets
because the government's trying to get his DNA.
And he was calling it like the toilet lottery.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he had like some terminology that he was going on, and he said something about like, you know, like if he leaves any like follicles on public toilets, then like people are gonna take those and then like clone him. And so like he was really scared of that. And then he was talking about how he could like time surf using books, and I think specifically Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like gonna like, you know, surf through time, and we just like, it was just like kind of an experience of neither of us
like we're both nice Christians.
We didn't want to be rude, so we just kind of like
just sat there,
silently mutually agreed to just like let this happen. And so like he's just taking up like, I mean, it was at least a half hour.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
you know, like it took a while, so we're just kind of like, oh, this is happening.
Yeah.
You know, this is the experience we are getting. And then so we moved over after a while and found different seats. I think he ended up leaving. I don't know, like, or maybe he talked to someone else for a while. But we kind of came up close to closing time, and I finally got like the courage because I was like, I was like, look, I just wanted to ask a question. Like, I guess I get the feeling, and maybe I'm wrong, but I get the feeling that you really don't like me.
Well, you said you didn't like
Oh, they like, oh,
that you didn't like me when I moved here.
yeah, I guess it was kind of like, obviously we're on a date.
Yeah.
So there's that, but but that you traditionally have not liked me. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
And she was like, "You're not wrong."
Wow.
And then literally that moment, the employee was like, "Yeah, we're closing.
You need to leave." Yeah. And it's February,
Dun,
so it's cold
dun.
outside. So we weren't gonna hang out outside.
So we went out in the parking lot, and it was kind of like this awkward moment where like I almost followed up on that, but then it was like, well, I'm not gonna make you stand out in the cold, and so I just was kind of like, okay, well, have a good night. It was just like, yeah, it was like to be continued, lingering.
Okay.
But the honesty, I like the honesty, you guys. That's a great start.
So then like almost didn't go on a second date, I guess, like,
which is really awkward because I called my friend on the drive home and kind of said like, oh, it ended so awkwardly, I feel bad, blah blah blah. And my friend was like, don't worry, he'll ask you out again, like you'll be able to, this will be redeemed, and I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, I was like waiting for the second date, which is funny because when he tells his story, he's like, yeah, I was not planning a second date. And I was like, oh no, because I was waiting for one. So
and then I forget, but I did end up asking her out again, and
because we had a group, like we hung out as a group with some people and we had a lot of fun together, and we were
yeah,
like,
that's right. Yeah, we had like a sushi party, like we all came together and made sushi and tea, and it was like that was the party, and I invited you over, and it was something like, didn't the school board?
Oh, you didn't know that.
Not the school board chairman, but it was a different committee.
Yes.
And like you had a committee and you weren't going to come, and then he found out that like you were skipping the party for this committee.
So I didn't want to go to this party alone, and so a teacher that I was friends with was also going to go, but she was like, oh, but we have this committee meeting tonight, and she was like, and if it gets done early, like, we can go, but if it doesn't, I'm not going to go. And I was like, well, I can't go, by myself, I'm not going to be like the only girl at the party. That's weird, And so I texted my friend, the same friend, and her husband was actually chairing the meeting. And so she had texted him like, hey, this meeting has to be done by 6:30. And so he walks in the room and he's just like, okay, guys, it's going to be a quick meeting. We're going to be done by 6:30. And I remember the other teacher, like, literally was like, whoa, like, that's crazy, And yeah, we ended it at 6:30, and she was like, yeah, I guess we can go to this party. She's like, I never expected that meeting to end so soon. And I'm like, yeah, crazy. That's weird.
So, in church, when people find out, there are forces that try to get you together.
That is.
Oh, yeah.
And we did go out again after that too, and it was a good second date. Like we just talked for forever. And then I think we kind of like had the conversation about like, what is this, and like, are we boyfriend and girlfriend, and then I think
that came later actually, but
was it?
Yeah.
It was like second or third date, and then we kind of had the conversation about like, and again, I think just all the stuff hanging over that too. I think we decided like that we weren't going to tell people we were dating, that we considered each other boyfriend and girlfriend, but like that there was this potential real awkwardness about like a lot of people knowing our business. And so we kind of like, we're going to keep this to get like to close friends and between us, like we know this is happening, but like, and I kind of think I put it out there, like the whole, like if it doesn't work out, what happens at church, and so and I was like, I think I used the terms, and this was like a quote from a friend who I think I don't remember if he was dating as a pastor or as a student or what, but he just said, like, I think you need to allow it to be awkward, kind of was like his advice for for me with dating. And I kind of told her that, like, I was just like, it's going to be a little awkward, but like, I think we just have to like embrace that. Like, it's okay, because it just is what it is. Kind of like almost you have to take that risk.
Yeah, you're just gonna have to dive in and just
she
go.
thought that made sense. So then we started dating secretly. And
It didn't stay secret for long because
well,
Adventist kids,
but it was secret from most people. But yeah, like,
the kids we worked with on a daily basis were like,
there's something happening
this
here.
is weird.
But we wouldn't admit it.
Yeah.
But they kind of knew something was going on. And then we didn't date a long time.
No.
Again, purposeful. Like we started talking and started dating, and I think
February 15th was our first date.
Yeah.
And then we got engaged June 26th.
Same year?
Yes.
Wow. How old were you guys?
So that kind of helped. I mean, I don't know, like we weren't old, but like, I had an apartment, I had a job, I had a degree, like we were kind of like it wasn't like we were dating in the middle of college. It wasn't like, I was in a dorm. It wasn't like I was with my parents. Like,
Yeah.
It was kind of like hey, life is together. Why not move forward on this, instead of waiting too long. And
But to be fair, we had the serious conversations in those months. Kind of like, I mean, I feel like
and I told her, like,
yeah.
there was a moment while we were dating, and I kind of told her, like, hey, and this could have been like a easily scare someone off
It was
kind
scary,
of
but-
moment, but it was like, again, purposeful. Like, I'm a pastor. We know that this is kind of an awkward dating situation, and if I'm being completely honest, I'm dating with the idea of getting married. And then the real scary part was I think I said, and I would like to be married to you.
Yes, that's what we said. Yeah.
Wow.
It's like a quasi proposal.
Well, and just to like put it plainly,
Yeah.
like not to beat around the bush.
Mm-hmm.
And you were kind of freaked out at first,
Yeah.
but then you considered some things.
Yeah,
Like,
I just feel like in Adventism, everyone has the like, oh, and then we'll date for 2 years, and then we'll be engaged for a year, and you're like, and not that was like always my plan, but I like to follow the Adventist standards and whatever, and so when he said that, I was kind of like, whoa, like we've got 2 years before we even talk about this kind of thing, and then it was like the more I thought about it, it was like, I mean, I'm not, I don't know. It's not that I was
Like, what's
old.
going to change from here to a year?
Exactly. And so
Mhm.
then I was like, okay, well, let's have the hard, and so we went on a date, and it was like, how many kids do you want? This many. What's your goals for, your career in ministry, and like we just
went
had like
down
the
list.
hard conversations of like,
Are we compatible?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, we like this.
Yeah.
We could move forward, but are we compatible? Yeah.
Yeah.
Did it turn out? I don't
Yeah.
remember the
The conversation.
I mean, like, yeah, I don't remember some of the details.
So in June, you said you proposed, right?
Yeah.
So from then to wedding was how long?
We got married December 31st of the same year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Love that.
Awesome, man.
All in 1 year.
Yeah.
All in. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's a big change all in
Yeah.
1 year.
His announcement to the church was literally
Yeah. Well,
like,
okay. So let me unpack that. So, so we had been keeping it under wraps, right? And first of all, can I just tell a little side story that has to be told, because it's just a fantastic testament to how awkward dating is as a pastor. So
or in a church period. I don't know.
right before youth group, and we're planning for like youth group.
No, it was like Education Sabbath. So we were there all day planning things, but we had youth group that night. So we just
Yeah, okay.
stayed from school all the way till 7 o'clock that night, working on Education Sabbath, but then staying for youth group.
Working on stuff. We're at church, youth group. And this lady comes in. Were you there?
Yes.
You were in the room.
Yes.
So she comes in and
We're at opposite sides of a table, like working on our own. Like we're not even like talking, not like, sitting next to each other. Like we're just opposite sides of the table working on computers.
She pops in the room and goes, "I see you two." And we were just like,
Like kind of like, well, that's good.
yeah, or like, but then like the brief moment of like, what did we do?
Yeah.
It's like, I just want to let you know I see you two. And I was like, all right, cool. And she's like, no, I mean, like, my husband and I like did something similar. Like we
Wow.
we'd kind of sit on opposite sides of the church, like no one kind of knew that we were dating. And we'd go like he'd take me on trips to Appleton in his plane, and I was just kind of like, all right, like cool, and so I think we just kind of put a pin in it, and then like later I was like, well, that was kind of cute, huh? Like just like it was like, and she was just kind of sharing like that she's been through similar things. So
well, and at one point though, she was like, "You guys are dating, aren't you?"
Yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, but I don't know how you get that from us sitting at opposite sides of the table here, but yeah, we are, And then she made a comment of like, "Good, I can tell everyone that I was right," which is just one of those like,
wow.
like,
I think this was getting close to the engagement, right? No,
Education Sabbath would have been in April, so I mean, 2 months, but still.
Yeah, like halfway. But like, so I remember being like later, like, okay, that was kind of a cute moment, like she was resonating, whatever, And Allie,
you can't tell that part.
Yeah, I can't.
Okay,
I didn't say who it was.
Well, it's okay. Go on.
Now I'm curious.
She goes, I said, that's pretty cute. And she's like, not cute. She's talking about how she like started dating this guy, but she was already married.
Well, he was married too.
Yeah.
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 So that's why he would.
So that's why it was secret, and that's why.
Oh my gosh.
Their dates were like being flown to other cities, And I was just like, huh, like, and I think that again, that's part of the awkwardness of, and really like, this kind of led up to after we were married almost a year, we went to seminary, and like, and there was part of it that was kind of like, it's harder to pastor when you're married to or dating someone who kind of like knows
everything,
where all the bodies are buried, and and it was kind of like hard because I just took everything at face value. When you're a new pastor, like you just kind of like accept things very naively, and she would kind of be like, oh, but here's the backstory, and it'd be like, oh man, that complicates things, so there was a little bit of that kind of in all of the awkwardness. So yes, then we got engaged, and since it was secret, and all these people are saying stuff like, I can tell people that I was right, and like, the youth are kind of like, we know something's happening here, and so we got engaged, and I just took that as license. Like I was like, everyone knows now. Like they
already know.
And so literally, like I'm about to preach a sermon. And I'm just like, but before I get started, Allison Payne.
No, Hannah.
No, that's right. It's Allison Hanaway. Would you stand? And I can't believe you did. But she did, and I was like,
Man.
I'm gonna marry that girl.
Wow, that's so awesome, dude.
Times were different back then.
It's funny because I was at a Bucks game literally this past Saturday night, and a guy proposed to his wife at the Bucks game.
Yeah.
And so
If
This
people
is like
clap,
the Adventist version of that.
Yeah. Jumbotron,
Right.
It wasn't
Everybody's going
live
crazy.
streamed
Like,
back
yeah.
then, but a lot of people were there.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Now, the hilarious thing though is like, because he was about to preach, and then it was like he made eye contact with me, and he's like, "But first," and I knew what he was gonna do, and I was like,
Oh no.
"No, no, 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 no."
And I was just like, yes,
Yeah. It
this is happening.
Oh man.
So then everyone knew, which was nice,
yeah.
Yeah.
not to have to feel like we were sneaking around. And then, there's the awkwardness of like people thinking that, they wanted to say stuff about this and that. Okay, so I don't know if I can share this story. I would just say an administrative type person in our conference.
Oh, yeah.
I had told him that I was planning to get engaged, and I told him like, and I just wanted to give you a heads up, like I got a ring, and I'm gonna propose with a ring, but it's like really tasteful,
Mm.
and I picked it out for you.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to remember like if I knew that you like kind of understated things, like she's not like into the big rock,
Yeah.
and so it's just kind of like it's very tasteful, like it's and I just wanted to let you know like that's going to happen, like in case anyone wants to call you and be like, this pastor gave someone a ring, like it's a bad thing. I don't know, because I didn't know how Wisconsin was about that kind of stuff, and I know there are other conferences near us where it's like expected that a pastor would not wear a ring, but I didn't think that was the case here. And so anyway, I told him that, and he was just like, oh, it's like, I wish you would have talked to me before you went and bought that. And he just told me this long story. I don't really remember the point, but he was kind of like, long story short, like, I bought my wife a microwave. So
What?
Wow.
and I was just kind of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with that. Like,
Oh my God.
okay, well, all right, thanks. And then I think I felt so spooked that I went and like told the conference president, because I was like, man, like, am I going to get in trouble? So I wanted to get his take on it, and he was just like, "No, that's great, congratulations." And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm in the clear. That's good. And then I remember when I proposed, which was really great. We went around town, relived a lot of memories, and then I washed her feet, and there was lots of candles in a room. Like
It was at the church.
It was at the church, and it was kind of like, this is where we met. And I was kind of like, and I just want this to be like a symbol that like I'm in this to serve you, like, and so anyway, so then I pulled out a ring, but then I was like, after the fact, like, hey, but I had this weird conversation with this boss type guy, and like, should we wear watches?
No, you said you shouldn't wear that, but I bought you a watch if that's okay. And I was like, no. Like,
Yeah, she straight up was like, stop, you just gave me this, and
Yeah.
I'm going to wear it. And I was like, all right, well, yeah, I see your point. And yeah,
the thing about the ring, and again, not that we have to defend ourselves, but it only has diamonds like on one side. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah, I can see
they're
it.
in
Wow,
the
that's really
ring,
nice.
but then on this side it's just a silver band. And so I, because he was like, it's the frivolousness, it's like the diamonds and stuff. And I'm like, well, what if I turn it around and just show the silver band
for when we're around people and stuff? And
which
like,
now it's just a weird habit. I find myself all the time like just like turning my ring upside down. So
yeah.
But he let me wear it as long as I turned the diamonds
And
down.
then we just kind of forgot
And
about
then nobody
it.
ever like
No one ever
cared.
did. And actually, like,
Interesting.
I remember Greg Taylor, maybe I should say, I remembered a former youth director saying that he visited that church one time and was wearing his ring.
Yeah.
and it was like when he was interviewing or something.
Yeah.
And for the conference, and then like some guy like went to shake his hand, but then like grabbed his ring and
Oh my
was like,
gosh.
and was something like, I hope someday you will learn that like you don't have to tell the world that you possess your wife, or something like really weird and harsh. And so like it was like that was like their introduction. And so as they came into the conference, they like decided not to wear rings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was kind of like one of those, like, I just kind of, that was what he passed on to me. And so, yeah, I always figured there would be some conversation. And so I brushed up on all the, like, Ellen White, allowed for rings, if the culture demanded so, that it was like, okay, there's like all these writings back and forth about this, and so I was like ready to like do battle. And then no one ever cared. So now then this same guy who had an issue with the ring, then after, so we had our wedding, and there was the dancing at the wedding. And it was this whole thing where like no one at the wedding cared, but like someone who wasn't there found out and like called the conference on me. And so like someone
Oh my gosh.
drove to see me and was like, is it true? And we had this whole like big long conversation, and he was like, did you not know that was wrong? And I was like,
You have to say what he actually said.
Did you not read the fundamentals?
He said, did you not know that was a no-no?
oh yeah.
Wow.
You can't do the voice.
I didn't do the voice. I didn't do the voice. Nobody knew how I was saying.
Okay, but anyway, long conversation, and anyway, it was kind of the kind of thing where like I felt like I would reach out to this guy and not really get any responses, but like this was, he was going to come talk to me about this. So anyway,
Wow.
The important thing.
Yeah, the important things. So I don't know, the podcast episode is on dating, so that kind of concludes the dating. Although we continue to date, so that's good. Going on, well, not going on, just past 10-year marker. So
Wow.
Wow.
Congrats.
Congratulations, guys. That's amazing.
yeah,
Praise God.
went to seminary, came back, worked in a district. Now we're doing this. We've had 4 kids since, and
Wow.
our oldest was born on our first anniversary. So he
Wow.
9 when we turned 10.
Wow.
How cool is that? So now the whole episode is about purposeful dating, and you go from, first date in February to proposal in June. I would say that's very purposeful in a 4-month span. Is that something you would recommend, assuming like some other young adults had similar circumstances, or do you think that's pretty unique to you?
It's hard to.
I will say,
Yeah.
sorry, we just had some young people that we have worked with who met at camp and were married before the next year of camp.
Yeah.
And I had made a comment to Zach of like, I don't know, that seems pretty fast. I don't feel like they got to know each other very well. And Zach was like, and how long before we started or we got married? And I was like, all right, I rescind my argument. And so it is hard, because everyone seems younger than you, but it's just one of those when you actually think about it, and it's like, well, no, they knew what they wanted. They had the hard conversations. I mean, and they did, this couple did. They had the hard conversations like very early on, and we're just like, this is what I want. And
yeah. No, it was.
And forgive me for putting you on the spot again, but how old were you guys during that year that you dated and subsequently got married?
I was 24.
And 25 when we got married.
Yeah, and then
I was 22 when we started dating, and 23 when we got married.
Yeah, so it is hard. Yeah, when you look at someone else, it's hard. I mean, you don't know their journey, so it's easier to be like, I don't know if you guys are ready. Like especially when they're younger. But I just think it's something like to be like, again, being purposeful. If you're praying about it, if you're having those serious conversations, I mean, don't jump into it without hardly getting to know someone, or just because you had like a, you know, um,
Chemistry.
yeah. I mean, just, but I mean, I can't knock it. And I don't know. I think there's a lot of people who are kind of like I got a lot of advice. You get all sorts of advice. You guys, I'm sure, are very familiar, but like
Oh yeah.
all sorts of opinions on like, well, some people are like, oh, you should get married really young and then you get to grow together. And then some people are like, you should wait until you're at least in your 30s because then you're kind of settled in who you want to be and like,
Your
what
brain.
you want. And I don't know that there's any one right way. Those are both things to factor in. I think we're kind of in the middle of that, but I think everyone has a different journey. You just want to make sure you're praying about it and you're, making the decisions for the right reasons. And again, like I moved to Green Bay not for the purpose of finding her. It was kind of like that was the added bonus. Like God was like, whom shall I send? And I said, Lord, send me. And then it was kind of like, well, and having forfeited a life of there being a lot of girls around to date, there she was, and so that was kind of cool. And also I remember, and this is like a vague thing because I don't have the piece of paper anymore, but I remember I was journaling when I was in Tennessee, and I remember like, kind of like super emo kind of journaling, like, after breaking up with my last girlfriend before Allie, and like writing down like a super specific list of like, this is what I want in a girl. Like, and God, like, I challenge you because she doesn't exist. Like, I was just like very specific down to like, hair color and eye color, and I was just kind of like, and I was just like, no, like, and it was obviously like, personality stuff and like, life stuff and all this stuff. But it was like she doesn't exist. And that's part of why I went up to Wisconsin with like this confidence that I wasn't going to date or like find anyone. Because I was just like over it, and I was like, this girl doesn't exist. Like, it's not happening, at least not for a long time. Because I was just kind of like, I felt like maybe my standards had slipped a little, and so there was like, again, when you rebound, you don't always make the right decisions. So it was kind of like, I was like, let's do this right next time. But it's like way too picky. And then like, I remembered like, as I was getting to know her, like, again, I had lost the list, but it was like all the things kind of started checking off as I was getting to know her. Like, wow, I remember I had mentioned that was something like, wow, so there was like kind of like a lot of like oddly specific things that like I had prayed over and like even like challenged God, like that this girl with the whole package, and like it turned out she was checking off boxes. But I think even more than that, the cool thing was that she was ministry minded. I had dated only Adventist girls, and I just always kind of had the question of like, how would they approach ministry, or how would they deal with me doing ministry and being in that role? And she was like, I guess for me, she was the only one who would come to some of my programs, like, and she supported them, and she was always helpful. She had been a missionary. She was literally, had kind of like given up her dreams, to work for the church. And like, I just really respected all of that. And I just kind of knew that like us partnering together would mean us working in ministry together. And it has been ever since. And that has been a really cool thing, So again, kind of a perfect match in that way. But
now you've mentioned a couple times that if you have those difficult conversations, could you specify what those difficult conversations are for somebody who's purposely dating, who say within 4 to 6 months to even 6 or 8 months, that's still pretty soon to decide to get married. So what are those difficult conversations that you feel that the young adults should have?
This is kind of like extrapolating backwards into the story, but like now I'm I don't want to say licensed. I have a certification like through Prepare Enrich to
Okay.
use their program to do marital counseling, premarital counseling. And a lot of what premarital counseling is just being kind of a mediator and sitting down with a couple and saying like, what do you want? Like, like, so like kind of challenging them to write down, like things like how many kids do you want? Things like, career, family, school, all these things, like what's important, like having those kind of compatibility conversations. And it's weird because people just like don't, and that was maybe how I felt like the track I was on with my relationship before her was like, it was almost like I kind of knew it wasn't going to end up great. I still kind of was hoping that it would turn out well and, end up in marriage. But like, there was kind of this part in this piece in the back of my mind that was like, I don't know that we're really that compatible. We liked a lot of the same things. It was fun, but we didn't really have like tough compatibility conversations. And maybe partially because like I, in the back of my head, kind of already knew it wasn't really headed that direction. And so I think a lot of times people just don't, and then they've been dating someone for so long that they just kind of are like, and maybe there's pressures from the family, and I remember that was partially in my relationship before that. Partially, we got engaged, but there was also like this kind of perception that like I was taking too long to decide one way or the other. And so I kind of felt this pressure of like, well, I probably should make a decision, and I feel like I should commit, and it was kind of more out of obligation. And so again, like not doing anything out of obligation, but also like being willing to to talk about the compatibility things, and those can be awkward conversations because no one really wants to be dating, having a fun time, and then like ruin it by saying like, how many kids do you want? Well, I don't want kids. Wah, wah. And we've all watched the
Makes
sitcoms.
sense.
We've all watched the sitcoms where like that's it. Like, okay, like now we're breaking up. And I think people are afraid of being real and then getting hurt, and so they just kind of move forward. And then like one day they're just like, I don't know, we've been dating for 2-3 years,
That
and
or
like
they date hoping each other will change
right,
mine, which is also a
yeah,
dangerous game to play.
yeah. So there's that. So I mean, I think we were just kind of like, let's expedite this. Like, if it's not going to work, we want to know it's not going to work. If it is, we want to kind of move forward towards like being able to tell people. And I think like for us that was like being engaged, and so we didn't want to prolong the long secret dating game, and so it just forced us to get out of our shells and discuss a lot of things. And I think over the course, again, not just the things on my list that were being checked off as I got to know her, but I think the things on both of our lists of what we were looking for in someone, it was like weirdly we wanted a lot of the same things. I think she wanted more kids than I did.
I just said I didn't want the pastoral, like one boy, one girl. Like
Yeah.
I wanted to be open to having more than just the cookie cutter.
Which, surprise, that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
But you compromise.
Yes.
So I mean, like when it comes to stuff like that, I mean, you don't know how that journey is going to turn out anyway until you get married and you start being intimate and then start like family planning, and you kind of even know whether or not you can have kids, and like there's all that all those kind of conversations. You can plan on it, but who knows what's really going to happen. So it was kind of like, well, that was maybe one of the areas where it was kind of like, well, we'll see what happens, and
We had money conversations, just like,
yeah.
I'm a pastor. I'm never really going to make a lot of money. Like,
Are you okay with that?
yeah. And I mean, my family was not wealthy growing up. So it was just kind of like, yeah, I know how to meal prep
Manage.
and
Yeah.
like
Be economical.
budget and
Yeah.
and so just conversations about money are important.
Although somewhere in there we we failed to discuss how I was kind of bad with money too.
Well,
So
yeah,
that
that I
was
learned.
Interesting.
Was that something we learned over time?
that was a fun rude awakening pretty early. And it was like she had moved in, and then like it was apparent that I was like always paying my my rent late.
He so rent was due on the 1st, but he'd be like, but you can wait until the 5th. And I'm like, but they charge you a fee. And he's like, oh, it's only a $50 fee. And I'm like,
Only.
$50. I'm like, and you have the money. Why aren't you paying it on the 1st? And he's like, well, I mean, because it's not actually due until the 5th. And it's like, that's not how that works. He had a credit card that, I mean, here's the hard thing. He bought things for ministry on it. Like, so things that can get reimbursed, but he didn't pay it off. And then was just kind of like, well, it's okay. I pay the minimum payment, so it's fine. And I'm like, no, like that racks up your interest. And so again, that we learned kind of early on.
She had to teach me some things.
Yes.
What are some things like or some conversations you didn't have that looking back you probably should have had?
Sorry.
So I mean, and again, like we prepped with a lot of things. We felt pretty comfortable, but yeah, I mean, the money thing being one.
We'd never gone through a tax season together.
Yeah.
That was unfortunate.
Well, and I will say this, I kind of scored. We got married on New Year's Eve, and
So he got to claim
I got
me.
to claim her that year. Sorry, parents.
But yeah, I did not realize that pastors are considered self-employed. And so
there's a lot of unique things about how pastors do taxes, and I had my mind wrapped around it a tiny bit, but then she kind of came in and was doing the finances, and then was kind of like, how in the world am I doing these taxes? And there's like a bunch of weird things with pastors, like you can claim exemption from like paying certain taxes.
Well, yeah, no.
I'm trying to remember what's the.
It's the parsonage that.
Well, there's the parsonage
off,
thing too, which means like no matter where you live as a pastor, can you guys see us, or is that?
Yeah.
Wherever you live as a pastor, there's like a way that you can claim a percentage of the things that you spend on your place of dwelling. So that could be rent, but also like any improvements, where you can like basically claim that as like untaxable because it's quote for work. And so there's a lot of like little details like that. And so, yeah, that was
basically we came to the end of our first tax season and we owed money. And I was like, I have never owed money in my life. Like, what happened? And, we called the conference and they were kind of like, well, yeah, we don't pay taxes. Like you guys have to pay the taxes. And so that was our entire savings that year. Everything we had saved went to taxes that year, which, was fine. I just didn't know that. And neither did he, honestly. Like, I was like, how do you not know this? Have you done taxes? He's like, well, yeah, but I was single. So I just wrote a check and it, wasn't a big deal. And
yeah.
I mean, you guys were still pretty like young still, so, I know 23, 24, it's not like, super old, but, you guys are still young learning stuff.
Well,
and
the reality was, that's not like super young, but at the same time, yeah, I mean, I had graduated from college. I had only been out of college like a year. And this was like the first time I was really living on my own, had a full-time salary income. And, I was kind of like celebrating being single and like spending money on me for the first time in a long time. and then I unexpectedly met someone, and it didn't look pretty, but the whole thing was that like, yeah, this was my year of like, I can buy what I want, I can do what I want, like my free time is mine, my finances are mine. And so then she came in the middle of that and it was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I didn't really have a great game plan, I just was having fun.
I have a question. Would you say like, because you're obviously, a pastor in ministry, and Allison, obviously, we're involved in ministry. Would you say there's like maybe levels of importance to, the hard, conversations that you're talking about as well, or is there like, yeah, is there a level of importance to those hard conversations and just getting to know someone? Or like being involved in ministry, or does it kind of like, is there like one thing that's super important and then the other things kind of like, I guess they're like on the side, but like, if you're in ministry then it really doesn't matter, because I feel like as Adventists, the expectation is like, oh well, if there's an Adventist girl here then you're okay, that's the one you should go for. But is that like the only thing that really matters? Are there other things that matter, like like I said, those hard conversations, getting to know someone, chemistry and stuff like that? Or how would you balance those things?
I think the whole being equally yoked thing, which is super subjective, honestly. I don't know. I don't know if you guys know this, but like there's like a kind of, and people break this, but among pastors, when it comes to marrying a couple, there's kind of like expectations, and like almost kind of like unwritten agreements among pastors, that like for example, if two people are Adventist, do the marriage counseling, make sure they're compatible, but like but okay, go ahead and marry them.
If two people
If
are
two people are not
non-Adventists.
Adventist and they come to you and they're your friends or whatever, again, do the counseling, make sure they're, not going to hate each other, but like then, go do the wedding. But if someone's an Adventist and someone's not an Adventist, like it's kind of a no-no. Like it's like, like people will talk about you, like other pastors will talk about you. Cause like the unwritten agreement is that like, we're all in a team as Adventist pastors. Like if there's a bunch of pastors in the area and one person's like, no, like you're an Adventist, you're marrying a non-Adventist. Like I'm not going to marry you unless you kind of figure this out, like, because you're not equally yoked. And there's other ways to be unequally yoked, obviously, but that's like a more obvious one. And so then it would be kind of annoying if you were to say that, and then they were to go to another Adventist pastor who's like, "Yeah, I'll marry you. It's no big deal." Like kind of seen as like a betrayal of like the clergy. Like like you're supposed to have my back. We're supposed to agree on like what the standards are. So so then the hope would be you study with that person. Maybe they become an Adventist. The thing that you don't want is for that person, the Adventist, to leave the church and be like, okay, now we're both not Adventists, so marry us.
Exactly. It's what we know it usually happens.
Right. Well, and then they find a Catholic priest to do it. So it can happen, but yeah.
Or the opposite, where they become an Adventist but they're not really convicted. You guys may have like the chemistry, but they're not really, convicted, and then
Yeah.
We know someone, and they're still married, and happily married. But again, he was an Adventist, she was, but she was kind of like,
He
oh,
wasn't an Adventist.
oh, sorry, yeah, wasn't an Adventist, she was, yeah, and she was kind of like, oh, but we talked, and I said I wanted my kids to go to Adventist school, and he was like, yeah, that's fine with me, and she was like, okay, and and I want to bring them to Sabbath school. We don't have to stay for church, but at least Sabbath school on Sabbath. And he was like, yeah, that's great. I love consistency and blah, blah, blah. And now they are married and they have had their first kid, and she never brings the kid to Sabbath school because, and I quote, he works all week and Saturday is his day. Like, so they have to stay home to spend time with him because it's his day and he doesn't want to go to church. And so she can't take her kid to church. And I mean, and she just sees it as like, no, it makes sense. He works all week. And I'm just kind of like, okay, but this was a conversation that you had. And you're, like, what's going to happen? Well, I mean, we already know what's going to happen when school comes, because he's already like, yeah, no, my kids are not going to Adventist school. And she's kind of like, okay, well, we'll find another private school in the area. And it's kind of like, okay, but you realize that, so again,
there already
there
kind
are
of giving up those things.
Conversations that you can have that, I mean, you have to wonder, is the person just saying yes to get through these hard conversations, which And again, I'm not trying to say, because their marriage is really good. It's just like on these conversations, it's already going down.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then you don't want to see people playing a role that's not really them, because well, now I committed to this, and now I realize that we didn't actually mean that when we said that, and so yeah, I think the whole, so being equally yoked, again, it's subjective, but like you kind of hope that you have similar values on things that are important. I mean, I'll say a conversation we didn't have, I think, was politics.
Oh,
Oh,
I feel like politics is better then, though.
Huh?
Like politics has really only vamped up in the last.
No, it's always been crazy,
but it's not been that.
but the
this
thing is,
crazy.
we weren't really tuned in, I feel like, so much, and I was kind of like not paying a lot of attention then. But it was like within the couple years after we got married, like I got really like into things, which then made it obvious that like we saw things kind of oppositely on a lot of issues. And so then I would be like, hey, let's talk about this. And she'd be like, well, I'm going to dig my feet in because I don't agree with that. And then we kind of argued about that, which I thought was fun because, I mean, it's kind of like getting to know each other still, but I think over the years we've come a little bit closer to each other's views. But there was a long time where like we just kind of agreed to disagree on a lot of things on that, and that that potentially is a big issue for some people. I think it's turned out not to be a huge issue for us, but
we both conceded on various things.
Conceded, but then like changed our views on things too, and listen to each other. And I think talking about like things that are important, a big thing for me, and I don't know if I've ever really told you this, but like as far as like an overarching like, are you compatible with someone kind of thing, and this just maybe falls in line with my view on like God and humanity and like free will and stuff like that too. Like you can't really love someone if you control them.
Exactly.
Like love by definition is freedom and not control and coercion. And so like I've appreciated that. I think we've been pretty willing to let the other person be themselves. And to the point that I think that sometimes then we'll come to a place where it's uncomfortable and we realize like we don't see eye to eye on something. But I don't think that we've ever, like, we've argued about things and like said like that we feel strongly that the other person is wrong on something, but that's never made us like, well, if you don't change then I'm done with this, or like like, I mean, we've been pretty like willing to live with each other through finding out that like, oh, we don't see eye to eye on this, or like I think you're wrong on this, but like or I think your taste in this is bad, and or like like those kind of things, like, and I think we've just been willing to be okay with the other person being themselves, and sometimes that means seeing the other person as maybe even flawed to a degree, but then like being okay with that because like we're all flawed. And so kind of having that like on one hand having the tough conversations and saying like we want to be compatible, but then like we got married and then like not being legalistic about that, well, I thought this when we got married and that turned out not to be true, and so I'm not like, how can I love you, or like my vows are invalidated because I thought you were a different person. It's like it was just kind of like, oh, like we're growing and we're learning who each other are, and that takes a lifetime. And if we find that there's something that's just like not working, well, let's talk through it and kind of try to come closer together in our view on something. And there's still things that we tease each other on for just being wrong about things, like like I think that she's way too picky with food. And I'll eat anything, and she knows that she is too picky, but it doesn't mean that like I'm gonna make her food that I know she's not gonna eat, and like just
right.
That's pretty superficial, but
Another thing, sorry, just leading from that.
No.
Argument style.
Oh yeah.
When you date for a very short time, I mean, you're on cloud nine, so you're not arguing. So we had
Right.
to learn each other's argument style during marriage, which was hard.
Well,
Rude awakening.
we just learned that like I'm from, Florida. You don't really call Florida the East Coast, but I think as far as like working through things, the Southeast is a lot more confrontational. We're gonna get loud and we're gonna work through this right now because it's an issue and we're gonna resolve it now.
Where
And
we have the Midwest freeze.
the Midwest is like, dude, don't talk to me.
Yeah.
Like you're wrong and we're not having this conversation.
So like our first like big fight, he's like, no, I want to talk about this. Like, blah, blah, blah. How was I wrong? Tell me how I was wrong.
And she thinks I'm being a bully.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I'm not talking to you. I don't want to talk about this or whatever. And like, we've learned that like with me, I just get too in my head when we argue, and I'm just like, I feel like I'm going to say something really mean. And so I don't want to say anything mean. And so I just won't talk. And so he has learned that when I get that way, like, I just need a minute. And honestly, sometimes we'll be riding in a car and we'll just be quiet for like 25 minutes until I can formulate a nice way to say what I want to say. And then I will just start talking. And then he,
and I've learned to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like part of the communication process and like learning about each other too, though, is like, because I like had to express that like, hey, when you don't talk to me based on us like having an argument, like that makes me think that you're leaving. Like, like
Wow.
and I'm definitely more past that now.
Yeah.
But I mean, having come from like, I mean, it was only like, I don't know, like a year before that I had broken up with my last girlfriend. And so it was like, and then, broken off something, a year before that. And it was like kind of you have that series of like, the signs when someone is kind of growing tired of you and things aren't going well. And like, and it was just kind of like this seemed like a sign. So like, I figured, you were kind of done. You didn't want to work things out anymore. So like, it's over, and I had to like express that. And then she was like, oh, well, that's not what that means. And I was like, it still feels like it, but okay. Like,
I feel like now when we argue, I'm just like, you need to give me a minute so I can.
Well, she doesn't even have to say it now.
Well, I know.
And I just like,
I used to have to say it.
And I just know, that's how she works things out. So, and we've had some really slow motion arguments, like we
fought for days.
Yeah, one of us will say something that's kind of cutting, and then we'll just kind of like both sit there and think about it for a little bit, and then someone else will like kind of lob something across the room, like yeah, well, I don't think this, and then we just kind of think about it, like,
and then the kids wake up from their naps, so we do parent things, and we do
table
dinner,
it, and then circle back.
Yeah, and then after bedtime, it's like, so when you said this, like,
yeah. But you just learn to become more comfortable with arguing, and like a part of it.
Yeah.
So
heck of a story, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Before we go, though, I would ask, what kind of advice would you give to young people as they date and pursue dating with purpose? Like, if you could put yourselves in our shoes who are single, what would you say?
Man, that's hard.
I don't want to
Loaded question.
Okay. I mean, obviously my whole experience is God has a plan. And I know.
But that's so hard to hear.
I know.
You know what I mean?
And
but like mine was going to be like, pray about it. But it's like, people pray about it,
Yeah.
That seems really condescending or like, pedantic.
Although sometimes the obvious answer is just the answer,
Yeah. Well, and like almost again, like you have to lose your life to gain it, like in a Christian kind of, way. And like, almost like, I mean, and again, I don't know if I'm sure people give up on dreams and this and that, but again, like for me, like I had to leave the place where I knew I was going to find my wife. And then God brought me to where I was going to find my wife, like, but I didn't know that.
Wow.
Just kind of like, it was kind of like I just totally came to a place in my head where it was like, yeah, I'm no longer pursuing. and that's your podcast, The Pursuit, but it was almost like, and I've come to a place in life where like maybe my theology is like when it comes to like resolving a big problem in life, that I a lot of times just pray that the Holy Spirit goes ahead, like almost like in the Old Testament battles where like it was like the Spirit went ahead and won the battle, and they just like walked in and it was already won, and to some degree, like you have to be willing to say like I'm not going to figure this out on my own. It's bigger than me. So like, I'm just going to put it in his hands. Like, if he wants this to happen, he's going to have to work it out for me. And like I said, I challenged God almost like, you're going to have to find this perfect woman. Cause like I'm skeptical that she even exists. So that's where I was at, was just like fully leaning on God to the point that like I was just comfortable with never finding that person and being okay with it. And in the pastoral field, that's less weird than it used to be. But like it's very advantageous to be married as a pastor, and so I was kind of like giving up on that model of life and giving up on finding that person in the time frame that I wanted. And then it was kind of like it just happened very naturally in some ways. So that's a long roundabout way of saying pray about it.
Hey, we appreciate you guys spending like an hour and a half with us. Thank you so much. We learned a lot. Before we go, how can I pray for you before we let you go here? You guys said you were busy. You're already looking for people to work at Wakanda, right?
Yeah, recruiting.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's a lot of travel. So just pray for like more hours in each day, like the sun would
So
stand
if the sun
still, right?
stops.
Yeah, for the staff, as we go, but also just the travel, like, our kids like traveling, but then they don't. And it's the same thing with us. Like I love to travel, but then I get really tired of it. And Josue, you get that,
Yes.
but I think yeah, I mean we're gonna be at Andrews all next week, and then Southern the next week, and then Union the next week. And yeah, it's a lot of traveling. And then I'm going to go to Walla Walla, and then I'm going to start a doctorate, and I'm going to be in California for 3 weeks.
Wow.
Oh wow, what's your doctorate in?
Leadership.
Nice.
Dude, that's
That's great.
sweet.
Yeah, in a ministry context. So
Yeah, Mike, would you mind praying for them before we let them go?
Yeah, for sure.
Sweet. Let's do it.
Let's close our eyes. Dear Lord, just want to thank you again for this opportunity to be able to use this platform to be able to discuss, the landscape of relationships when it comes to, finding that life partner. Thank you for, Pastor Zach and his wife Allison for, joining us. The Lord, I just want to continue to ask that you, be with their ministry and their work here in this conference. They've, been here for years, and, they put in a lot of work, to Lord, and just continue to bless them, and that they, grow together as as a family with their kids, and that their ministry continues to grow and that it bears fruit, especially with the camp. The Lord be with them as they start their traveling to all the different locations. The Lord have them meet the right people, and make the right connections, so that they can have a great staff and a great summer this year, as well as be with Pastor Zach and his doctorate that he will be doing, to Lord. Just help him to have an open mind, and whatever he needs to learn, just to give him the knowledge for that, and be with Allison and her ministry as well, and all the work that you want to do through her, dear Lord. So and just be with this podcast. We hope that we reach people and give people encouragement and assurance through Pastor Zach and Allison's story, and as well as all the other things that we talked about. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen.